Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Again, we are just sticking with this space today. Again, I'm a little pressed for time and we're just trying to pre-film a bunch of videos before I need to leave for work. Today I'm going to be doing my August reading wrap-up. I know it's a little late, but better late than never. During the month of August, it was the Newt's Readathon, and so I did a reading vlog for every week for the month of August. If you want to check out those videos, you can check out little cards I have going on. If I'm being completely honest, I didn't really prep for this video, so I don't know for which Newt each book really counted for. I just know I did everything I was supposed to, and I am now a magical librarian. I was supposed to read at least 7 books, and thankfully I did do that. I had hoped to read 9 books in August, but that didn't happen. Did I actually? Hold on. I went off saying I don't know what, but do I actually have my little TBR thing that I get? I do. I have it, so I can actually tell you what was for what. First book that I completed in August was for the first level of Defense Against the Dark Arts. I needed to start with, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So there's, for each subject, in order to get, the passing grade, which is acceptable, you needed to read 1 book, and then you needed to read that book first before moving on to levels E and levels O. So you couldn't just skip to O and then read the books for A and E. You had to read them in a specific order. So for Defense Against the Dark Arts, I needed to read a book that's black under the dust jacket for the acceptable level, like the book that I needed to pass for this subject. And for that, I chose Stars Above by Marissa Meyer. This is actually just a bunch of short stories that connects to the Lunar Chronicles. The Lunar Chronicles is a series, a sci-fi retelling of all these different fairy tales, focusing more on Cinderella. Like in the back here, first book, Cinder, focused on the Cinderella one, Scarlet, Red Riding Hood, Cress, Rapunzel. The novella Fairest focused on the evil queen from Snow White, and Winter focused on Snow White. And these are just little short stories that connected at various parts throughout the Lunar Chronicles. And if you get the book all naked, it's black under the dust jacket. It's really nice embossed thing too. You can't really see it, but that's really pretty. I really like simple stuff like that. Ooh, and the spine is gorgeous too. So overall, a very pretty book under the dust jacket. I ended up listening to this on audiobook, so I was able to get through it relatively quickly. And of course, I preferred some of the short stories over others. According to my Goodreads, overall, I did rate this 3.5 stars. My favorite story was The Little Android, which I rated 5 stars. 4 stars for Princess and the Guard, but trigger warnings for the story, rape and suicide. And Something Old, Something New, 4 stars. And the rest of the stories were rated 3 stars. Overall, this was really fun, and I would recommend reading this if you're a huge fan of the Lunar Chronicles, but I don't think this was really necessary to read for the Lunar Chronicles. I think the only one that really tied into the actual stories was the last one, Something Old and Something New, and it kind of gave you a prologue of what happened at the end. But I liked it a lot. I have a soft spot for fairy tale retellings. The next book that I read in August is The Near Witch by Victoria Schwab. This is actually her debut novel. I've talked about Victoria Schwab a lot on this channel. She's one of my favorites. So of course I wanted to check out her roots. This counted for the A level for, I want to say arithmancy. Come on. No History of Magic. Read a fantasy. This is a fantasy book. Overall, it's about a girl. What's her name? Lexi. Lexi lives in this village, and out of nowhere, kids start going missing in the middle of the night, and so she investigates why kids are going missing. Her sister is in that age group, and so she wants to figure out what's happening before her sister becomes one of these victims. I struggled with some of these characters and how they interacted with each other. Lexi and her uncle were just at odds the entire time, and although I understood their motives for doing that, a lot of these issues wouldn't have been issues if they just freaking communicated with each other. So that was particularly frustrating for me. And there's actually also a romance happening between Lexi and somebody else in the story. He was a stranger, and at first it seems that he was the one taking kids, and so she goes and investigates that lead, and then becomes a romance between the two. but it was so insta-lovey that I was like, oh, no, no, no. I wish there was more build up to this romance. It just felt really forced. Like Victoria was told she needed to include a romance in order to get this book published. The only reason I rated this 3 stars, spoilers, I rated this 3 stars. The only reason that this got 3 stars and not 2, because I actually liked the ending. I liked how things wrapped up at the end. It was interesting to see Victoria's roots with this book, but you can definitely tell she has improved so much as a writer since this first book. All right, the next book that I read in August is Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. This originally was going to be the O level for Defense Against the Dark Arts, like read a book by an English author set in England. But I wanted to read this, and I knew for a fact I wasn't going to catch up to the O level for Defense Against the Dark Arts. So this counts actually read a book that includes a map. Most fantasy books includes one, and in the end pages here we see the subway map for the underground. I really liked this little addition to the book. I think that was really cool. I actually listened to this on audiobook. I enjoyed listening to the book because Neil Gaiman read it and he has a really nice voice, but I struggled so much with this book. Richard, who's our main character, finds a girl hurt on the ground and he goes to like help her and sends her on her way back home after everything's said or done. But sending her home actually made him like fall through the cracks of reality. There's above ground London and lower London. Whereas lower London, you were part of this like fantasy world London. Yes, you can go into regular London, but regular London can't actually see you or interact with you. So Richard loses his life. He loses his job, he loses his fiance, but to be honest, the fiance wasn't worth keeping around. He loses everything because he showed compassion towards this girl, and so he goes and finds this girl whose name is Dor and helps her whatever she's doing in exchange to have her help him find a way home. And I actually thought this was really boring until I think maybe 3/4 of the way through and things started getting interesting. And for the majority of the book, I actually didn't like Richard. I thought he was so wishy-washy, and I was like, dude, why are you trying so hard to get your fiance back when she's actually a terrible person? But this also got rated 3 stars instead of 2 because of the ending. Honestly, this could have been one of his novellas, and I would have enjoyed this so much more. This was so big and beefy, and it didn't need to be. This book just dragged so much, and I'm so conflicted about not really loving a Neil Gaiman book. And that's all I read for History of Magic, and so I got the required E level for History of Magic at this point. The next book I read in August is Shrill by Lindy West. This counts for the A level of Ancient Runes. Read a book recommended by a friend. Sylvia from Wish Fulfillment had rated this 5 stars on her Goodreads page, and she's very stingy with her 5-star reads, so she loved this. I figured this was worth reading, and I also loved this. I also rated this 5 stars. This is nonfiction. It's about Lindy West talks about what it means to be a plus-size woman in our society and the media, and how she has to deal with trolls about the way she looks. She also talks about feminism and what it means to be a woman, again, in our society. She even was very candid about an abortion that she's had several years ago. And there were times where she was very serious and what she was saying was incredibly hard-hitting. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. And she would say stuff like this, but she wasn't afraid to tell a joke either in connection with talking about this serious thing. So I loved this. I thought it was very good. I thought it was so well written. 5 out of 5 stars. I feel like you guys need to give this book a chance whenever you can. Alright, so the next book that I read in August is The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken. And this is the first book in a series. I don't know why I was about to show you like this. First book in a series, and I've had this book, I owned this book for a good while until I eventually got rid of it. And now that I've read it, low-key regretting getting rid of it, but you know, it's whatever. I love the world building of this. So this takes place in a society where kids are dying, and if they're not dying from this plague, it's because they actually have this mutation or this genome or whatever you want to call it that's giving them powers. And the government is afraid of these kids, and so the government takes these kids and puts them in camps. Government is telling the parents, no, we're taking these kids to these camps to help them get better, but honestly, they're just sticking them away from society. Our main character, Ruby, yes, Ruby? I'm totally spacing. Yes, Ruby. Our main character, Ruby, is an orange. These different abilities are labeled by color. We have yellow, those who can manipulate electricity. We have green, people are just more intelligent than average. And when I say like they're more intelligent than geniuses, that's the only way I can really explain it. They have photographic memory. I don't know how else you would describe greens other than they're like super smart. And then we have blues that can have the ability to move objects with their minds. And then we have oranges, people who can actually control people with their minds. And then we have reds, people who have the ability to mess with fire. And I think that's all of the colors. I feel like I'm forgetting a color. Ruby is an orange. At the camp that she's at, she's actually able to trick the person processing her into like labeling her as a green. So she like stays with the greens until, you know, all the other oranges and reds and yellows are forced away from the camp. So she's the only technically orange at this camp. And she hides the fact that she's an orange until they do a test to kind of root out any other like missing reds or oranges. And this terrorist group like sneaks her out of the camp, like saves her life. Ruby then runs away from this terrorist group, and it's her on the run. That's the majority of this book. She's on the run here. And the book focuses more on her like being really scared of herself. Because the reason why she got into, I can't talk about the reason why she got into the camp because that's a bit of a spoiler. But basically she can't control her abilities, so she's rather scared of herself. I loved the story. I thought it was very cool. I loved the world building of it. I was so enraptured and really into the story. But I still rated this 4 out of 5 stars because there were elements to the story that took me out. So there was a moment in the story where she shaves her legs, but she didn't need to shave her legs and she was already injured. So she just made herself bleed even more. I don't understand why this scene was written to tell us that she took the time to shave her legs since she just never shaved her legs before. Whoa, goodbye. That's how pissed off I am about her having to shave her legs. And there were just other moments like that in the book. So as much as I loved this, there were just weird moments like that, and so I rated this 4 out of 5 stars. So really great, just 4 out of 5. I'm not sure if I said this, but it counts for my for the E level of Ancient Runes, read a book that's written in the past tense. At this point of the readathon, I'm kind of like struggling to make sure I get like the bare minimum of what I needed to read for the month. And so for my read a book that's been on my TBR for ages, which is the O level for Ancient Runes. So I read Beware the Kitten Holy. It's a first volume of Lumberjanes, which is a graphic novel series by Noelle Stevenson. It kind of follows a bunch of girls at this camp, and the camp seems to be relatively normal. It's just when they're out on excursions, they come across like supernatural stuff. And while they're out on one of their excursions, they find a message in the secret cave, and so they like do a bit of investigation about this message in this cave. A lot of shenanigans occur. It's fun, it's quirky. There are elements where I knew it was supposed to be funny, but they didn't actually make me laugh. So I liked it a lot. I just didn't like how it kind of just drops you into the story and you're kind of forced to kind of just go along. I just wish there was some world building to it. I felt, like I said, I just felt like I was dropped into this world and expected to keep up. So I rated this 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. It was a really fast read, especially since it's a middle grade graphic novel. So it was easy, it was short, and at this point I finally reached the O level for Ancient Runes, so I finally did the max for that particular subject. And the last book I read was actually something written by a friend, Brave Like Lily by Richard Cardenas. At this point, I still had one more newt to complete. It's read a book that you just remembered from your TBR. It's the E level for Defense Against the Dark Arts. And originally I was going to read The Hazelwood because that's what I saw while I was completing or putting together my TBR for the month. But I was looking through a bunch of other stuff and I needed something shorter to complete this particular subject or this newt or whatever you want to call it. And while I was looking through my Kindle, I saw that I still had Brave Like Lily by Richard Cardenas. I see it, I just remembered it, it's going to count, and it's a middle grade book, so I know for a fact I can easily read it in an hour and a half. Boom, done. Brave Like Lily, it's a very sad book. I feel like I'm going to be mispronouncing this kid's name, especially since the character says in the book, this is how white people say my name, and I don't like it. Well, since I didn't hear it, I don't know how I'm supposed to pronounce it, so I'm probably going to pronounce it how most white people pronounces it. Mateo, his sister dies due to a confrontation due to the police, and this is him coming to terms with that death and trying to find justice for her and just dealing with that grief. So the book was very heavy. At first, I didn't think I was going to be really into it because it did take me a little while to get into the story. Just the sentences and the sentence structure is just very short and a little on the choppier side, at least for my personal preferences. But that's how most middle grade novels are written. But the more I read the story, the more I slowly slipped into it, and the more Mateo really bonded with me. I guess I bonded with the kid, and he made a little spot in my heart for him, and it really snuck up on me. And so when he experiences crying for this first time since his sister's death, I cried along with him. So every time this kid experienced something, I experienced the same emotions along with him. The ending especially upset me a lot. The ending is what usually happens in these type of situations. Interactions with the police, but of course it doesn't upset me any less. In the end, I rated this 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. And that's it. That's everything that I read in August, and that's everything that I needed to read for the Newt's Readathon. I'm really happy that I got through everything that I needed to get through, and sometimes you just gotta change your TBR in order to make things happen. But let me know down in the comments below if you've read any of these, or if you're interested in reading any of these. Did you participate in the readathon? And as always, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I guess it's ta-ta for now. Bye guys.